Hi, this is Sherrie from SLS Event Planning and Consulting. Welcome back to my channel. We're going to continue with our building block series, and today we're going to talk about food and beverage, also known as F&B. Why is it important? Everyone's got to eat at an event, and it's also a great part of making your event successful. Why is that? When your attendees are spending money to come to your event, you need to keep them in mind throughout the day. In addition to that, depending on what venue you're hosting your event, F&B could be a significant part of the revenue for having the space. So in regards to what type of venue, there's the hotel, there's convention centers, there's libraries, there's museums. Every place that you go to host an event is going to require revenue from you in order to book the space. So food and beverage is a great key revenue to give to the venue that you choose. Your attendees are there, they're going to need to eat, they're going to want a cup of coffee, they're going to have lunch, dinner, breakfast, snacks, what have you. So I always recommend to my clients, instead of paying to the hotel, I'm just going to use hotel for example, rent, because you're getting the space anyway, so why pay them money just to have the space? Put that money in food and beverage, because that's going to make the experience for your attendees that much greater, the success of your event that much greater, and it's going to keep your agenda a lot more on schedule. What I mean by on schedule is instead of your attendees having to go stand in a long Starbucks line or coffee line or even go back to their room to grab a cup of coffee, by you having coffee out in the break room or in the foyer space or even vendor space for them to go to when you're on a break, not only is it going to help you keep them there and get back into the session on time, but it's going to also bring something else to the table, networking. People can continue to talk, meet and greet each other, and talk about what just happened inside the room or what's coming up next. They can't do that if they're frustrated standing in line somewhere else to get a cup of coffee. A great way to bring networking to your event through food and beverage is not only through coffee and tea, but also if you have special sessions that have breakfast involved. Another experience that a lot of my clients like to do is they'll have special VIP lounges. What's a VIP lounge? So VIP are people who pay a significant amount more to come to your event, and they get special little incentives for doing so. One of those usually is special seating. They get to come in early on, choose their seats, which we'll talk about it in another building block series. But they also have another lounge area that they can go to, just like when you're a frequent flyer of a particular airline program. You get to go to a lounge at the airport and have quiet space, place away from everyone else. So you can create a lounge for your VIPs that have food and beverage in it. Now this is a little secret that hotels don't want you to know. What I like to tell my clients to do is you don't necessarily have to order F&B. I'm going to refer to food and beverage a lot as F&B. Food and beverage F&B through the hotel in the VIP lounge. You can, but you can also contract specialty coffee. You can have someone come in that's going to make little cheesecake desserts as a sponsor, for example. Those are ways to kind of work around it. You can even ask your hotel representative if they have connections in the area of baristas that can come in. I've had that happen quite a lot on events, and it's such a huge hit. Not just with VIPs, but out in an open area, in its own little area, for people to come and check out and see, well, what's this all about? You can offer it to everyone, or you can have it specially for VIPs or people in your coaching program that you're trying to sell later out through the event. So as you can see, F&B is not only a great revenue source for the hotel, but if done properly and planned specifically, it can also be a great revenue source for you in the success of your event. I bet you didn't even think that you could order your staff meals through F&B as well. The key to that is it has to be ordered through the menu, the banquet menu at the hotel. You can't do room service. You can't have it ordered through the restaurant. It just has to be through the banquet menus. And that could easily be done by working with your CSM, who's the catering service manager of the hotel. That is a great way to hit your F&B minimum. Now, F&B minimum is something that when you book a hotel or a venue that requires revenue from you and you decide to choose F&B as that revenue, you try to decide ahead of time how much you're going to be spending. And what the hotel looks at is they automatically assume you're going to be feeding your attendees breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, if you're going to have a reception, bar, drinks, appetizers, all kinds of different foods. And they take that into consideration and they break it down on price per person. Now, if your event is more than one day, then multiply it by the number of days. And this is what the hotel's going to come back and say, well, you're going to be spending this. So they may be looking at a 100-person event, 2 or 3 days, 3 meals, and saying, well, you're going to be spending $50,000. That's a lot of money. It's crazy, right? And you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't plan on feeding them. And they'll say, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So you just have to make sure up front when you are talking and communicating with your hotel representative, the sales rep in this case, what you're going to be providing to the attendees so that you and them can work on a reasonable amount of food and beverage. Now, you may be saying to me, well, Sherrie, I don't know what I'm going to be spending. I've never done one before. Take a step back. Think about it. What is the minimum amount? What I tell my clients who are doing an event for the first time is this. You can always add. With your first event, you don't have to just go all out. You don't have to feed them every meal. You don't have to make sure that, you touch on every point throughout the day. It's not your responsibility that they're fed the entire time. You just have to make it convenient for them. So think about it. Think about all of the things that you want to accomplish during your event when you map out the schedule. Do you want to have special sessions for people that you want to, say, upsell another program to, where you want to spend a little one-on-one time with them? If so, that's the perfect time to do a special food function for them that will require F&B revenue. If you're not going to have a ton of time for people to go to, the Starbucks or the hotel bar to grab a cup of coffee or back to their room, then you definitely want to provide coffee and tea in the morning, on the break, in the afternoon, so that you keep them wanting to come back and go back into the session. Otherwise, they're not going to get back in the room on time, or they may just not come back at all until the next session. That could affect the success of your event. Another thing that you can do when you're trying to figure out the food and beverage minimum in the beginning stages of booking the venue is talk through special menu options that you can do with that venue. And here's a new term, DMP package. So what is a DMP package? It's basically letting the hotel know that you may provide meals throughout the day. Now, it doesn't have to be both breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It could just be lunch. It could just be breakfast, or it could be coffee and lunch. It's all kinds of things. Now, most of the time, hotels won't offer that right up front. But if you really want to know the cost per head without having to take a guess at it or worry about what if I don't order enough food, or, I just don't want to overspend or underspend, talk about the options. Find out from the hotel or whatever venue you choose to go with what packages they offer. Sometimes they'll even offer a cost per head for beverages throughout the day. Me personally, I like that kind of option because then you're not going to run out of coffee. That's probably one of the biggest complaints that I hear at events is we don't order enough coffee because we don't want to pay the hundreds of dollars per gallon for the number of people there. So if you can find a venue that will give you a price per person, then it's up to the hotel to make sure that there's plenty of coffee there. Now, you can't say to them, I only want to order 50, enough for 50 people, and you're going to have 100 there, because that just don't work. You just have to make sure that you let them know the accurate number. Now, you can kind of be off by a few people, but the key to this is to, number one, get control of your numbers, your revenue, how much money that you're giving to the venue for the experience that your attendees are going to get from you by providing them convenience. Okay? The convenience, again, is coffee, meals. The biggest meal of convenience is lunch. Now, what are the options for lunch? Lunch could either be provided by you, or you can talk with the hotel about doing some quick turnaround service for them. The way to do that, it's called cash stands. Cash stands is exactly what it says it is. The hotel will set up in different parts of the hotel, convenient to your general session, where they can come and they can choose through quick things like salads or pre-boxed sandwiches, or just anything that they can quickly get if they were going to the local market, for example. And they'll set that up in sort of like a banquet style setting where they can come in and grab it, get into line and pay for it. Now, the key to that is to make it successful is to make sure the hotel will not only accept cash, but also credit card, or even possibly charge it to their room. The point of that is 3 key things. 1, convenience for your attendees because it's right there for them and they get to pay for it in any way they want. 2, you don't have to pay for it because it's not part of an F&B revenue source for you. It doesn't have to be part of your minimum. You just need to check with the hotel representative to see if there's a minimum that the cash stand has to meet. Sometimes they don't worry about it because that means other people in the hotel can take advantage of it too. It won't just be for your group. But depending on the venue, sometimes they'll require a minimum that has to be met, which is somewhere around usually $200 to $500. It just really depends on how big the venue is and how big your attendees are going to be, like the number of people there. So just make sure you know that ahead of time. And the third thing about it is, and you want to make sure that the hotel remembers this, it's guaranteed revenue for them. So not only are they going to get revenue from you through what other F&B you're going to order, but they're going to get guaranteed revenue from the attendees staying on site to buy food from them. And it also takes away the crowd from their other restaurants in the hotel so that their transient traffic, which means other people just staying there at the hotel, won't interfere, and they'll still have a good time and nobody will have to worry about standing in huge long lines. So cash stands is a really great way to bring convenience to your attendees and revenue to the hotel through another means, meaning the hotel will get it from the attendees and not you. And it keeps your attendees in the area so that they can get back into the room on time. Why is that important? It is important because if you only allow for an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, for your attendees to grab lunch during a very busy event day, and you want to give them all the convenience necessary to get something to eat that is decent, food for them to eat, and that they're going to want to come back into the room. Have you ever considered having a sponsored meal? What is a sponsored meal? You don't necessarily have to have vendors or sponsors at your event to have a sponsored meal. That just basically means you are offering to a speaker or a sponsor who would otherwise want a table to have an opportunity to be in front of your attendees. Now, this is something that used to happen quite a lot at events that I manage. And what that means is you tell the sponsor for a particular set fee, you can have stage time in front of my attendees during lunch or during breakfast. So they are usually guaranteed at least 45 minutes of stage time in front of your attendees. Now keep in mind, they're going to want to sell. So if you want your event to be strictly a non-selling event, that this idea is not for you. But as long as you let your attendees know up front that when they're in this sponsored session, they're going to have an opportunity to learn what Mr. Joe Smith is going to be able to teach them and provide them as a resource for their business, then they're okay. I mean, who wouldn't want a free meal? The great thing with a sponsored meal is it's revenue for you. Here's how that's a great benefit. If you have an F&B minimum that you need to meet with your venue, then have part of that F&B minimum met by someone else who's going to pay for it. So if you've had someone who's been wanting to speak on your stage for quite some time and you don't either have the time to put it on main stage, meaning any other time throughout the event other than a meal, or they have a particular product or service that they want to offer your attendees that, you're thinking, okay, it could be great, but it's not something that I really, really want on main stage, then a sponsored meal could be an option for you. So you can go to the sponsor and say, look, for X number of dollars, say anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000, I'm just throwing a number out there, you can sponsor a lunch. Now you have to make sure that you put a lot of things in order for this to happen successfully. That is, you need to make sure it's limited. So you let everybody know in the event that you only have an X number of seats available for this. Why is that important? Because $5,000 to $7,000 is probably not going to pay for hundreds of people to eat during that lunchtime. You also want to make it quick and convenient. So most of the time when you're doing a sponsored lunch like this, because it's stage time for the sponsor, it's most likely going to be a boxed lunch option. So you want to make sure that you have something that could be quick, easy to grab, and go back into the room. That brings me to my third point, which is do your best to make sure that whatever that they are serving, boxed lunches or salad or something like that that's quick and easy, that it's served inside the room. Here's why. I've seen this happen so many times, and it's sad to see, is the sponsor is excited because he's seeing all these people lined up to get the food, but they're lined up to go outside to grab the food, and half of them don't return to come back into the room. They're just going to grab a free lunch and go. Who's going to stop them? So by making it a lot more organized, taking the extra time to do so, and have the lunches inside the room, that's going to give two things. It's going to make it known to the other attendees that are not staying for it that they now have to depart, so you just have staffing to kind of segregate it out. The hotel will also provide banquet staff, usually standing beside the box lunch area to help hand out the food a lot faster. So you can kind of segregate that and keep it over into the separate area. Have those people, and then just make sure that those doors are manned so that people who have a lunch don't leave. You don't have to be rude. Just say, this is for this session. Here, take a seat. Let me help you find a seat. And you just kind of escort them up towards the front. The way to keep track of the number of lunches is through tickets. So what we used to do years ago is we would have tickets inside of the registration bag, or at some point throughout the event prior to the session, you have some sort of seat drop where the ticket, the form, is passed out on everyone's seat. And then you just make an announcement saying that the first 200 people, let's just use that number, who turn in their ticket for this awesome lunch session with X, Y, and Z, they get to stay and have a free lunch on them. And as soon as those tickets are turned in and you meet that number, you just make the announcement saying, I'm sorry. So you just have to keep that part a little bit more organized. Yes, it's a little bit more legwork, but a lot of advantage to that. Again, that sponsor is going to help you meet your food and beverage minimum. It's going to allow a good portion of your attendees to get lunch and an opportunity to learn what this person is able to provide them for their business that can help them get to the next level. If you're still trying to figure out ways to spend your food and beverage minimum with the hotel, I'll give you a couple of options. Option number one is networking receptions, where you could spend money through your bar as well as appetizer, or even if you want to make it more of a meal, you can do like a dinner buffet. Another idea is a quote-unquote VIP dinner, where only a certain number of people are invited to a nice dinner with you and your speakers. It's a great way to give that VIP experience a little bit more of engagement of one-on-one with you, the host, as well as the speakers that they may not have an opportunity to meet throughout the event. An idea that I shared with a client a couple of years ago, because they still needed to meet their food and beverage due to something that didn't happen the night before, was have a Q&A breakfast session. Now see, they were offering tickets for next year's event, and they were keeping track of those sales throughout their 2 or 3 day event, and they weren't quite where they wanted to be yet. So I said to them, look, give them more of you guys. Do a breakfast session. They need to eat anyway. You need to meet your food and beverage minimum. So they opened up the Q&A session to anyone who were interested in coming to next year's event. As they came in, they got the form, they filled out the form, they got free breakfast, and they also had a chance to ask questions that they didn't have time to do so throughout the event to the hosts and some of the speakers. So it was a great win-win all the way around. It's an awesome idea that you can have in your event as well. Have you ever considered theming your event or maybe your food and beverage based on the city that you're in? One of the clients I just worked with, we were in a new location for them, and it was sort of a destination type of event. So I worked with the hotel and the chef to come up with some themed-based food that matched the area that people normally wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. And we tried to tie that theme into the reception that was happening that night. So not only was it something that benefited our food and beverage minimum that we needed to meet, but it gave the attendees an experience that they wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. And it really made your event a lot more exciting because it was more of a theme, and not only did the food match, but the entertainment that was happening around the time as well, and it matched the city that we were in. So think about that as well, where you're going to go, what city you're in. Talk with the catering manager there, and also have them talk with the chef. You know, you can get on the phone with the chef yourself and talk about ideas. A lot of culinary chefs want to show off their expertise, and they may have suggestions that aren't normally on the banquet menus. So don't think that just by getting the banquet menus, that's all you have to choose from. Think outside the box. That's going to be a fun experience for your attendees, as well as helping you meet your food and beverage minimum. An additional thing to keep in mind in regards to food and beverage is the sensitivity to food allergies. Nowadays, there's a lot of people who not only have food allergies to gluten or seafood, the normal things, but you also have a lot of vegetarian, vegan, keto. I mean, there's just so many other diet restrictions and such out there. I wouldn't put too much concern on trying to meet everyone's food specifications. What you can do through your registration process, if you're providing meals, now this is only if you're providing meals, is put questions throughout your registration process that'll kind of go towards the lend towards the food allergy portion. You don't have to put too much concern on it. Just make sure that you ask the appropriate questions throughout the registration process if you're only providing meals. If you're just doing snacks, providing coffee and tea, or doing maybe 1 or 2 receptions, you generally don't have to worry about it. Most of the time, the hotels will put a third of on the side an option for a vegetarian. That way you don't have to really be too concerned about it. However, if you are providing meals, it is something that you will need to ask your attendees. And you can check with the hotel themselves and look at their menus and see what options are where you can make sure you have a vegetarian option. Or if you have a large number of attendees, you can have a separate buffet station specific just for vegetarians. And then that way they have their own area to go to, and your attendees have the regular meals to go to. So just keep that in mind when you're discovering throughout the process what kind of food and beverage that you're going to provide at your event if you have to worry about food allergies. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget, if you want to reach out to me directly, here's my email. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. See you next time.